You're listening to Create Wealth Through Franchising, and I'm your host, Kim Daly. In my 20 years as a franchise consultant, I've helped hundreds of people achieve their dreams of building and scaling franchise businesses to create wealth. The interview you're about to hear can also be found on my YouTube channel, where I post new franchising content multiple times per week. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and to my YouTube channel at kimdaly.tv. Now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Daly Coach YouTube channel. Boy, have we got a juicy conversation for you today. So please, before I talk about the topic, let me introduce my great friend, former colleague, Erik Van Horn.
Kim, it is great to be here. I have so much respect for you, what you do. You've coached me along the way as I was an up and coming consultant. So I have tremendous amount of respect for you, and it's great to be here today.
Thank you so much. Well, I've invited you into this conversation because I cannot think of a better person to help me. I look at my job as a franchise consultant as a teacher, right? To dispel the myths, to help people open their minds, to challenge their thinking, right? You were a consultant. And so the conversation I want to have with you is regarding validation, talking to other franchise owners, and what should candidates be focused on, and how much information should be enough information.
At the end of the day, you validate if what you've been told is true. So that's how I think of it. Learning all of this, going through all of it, that's really what it comes down to for me. What I want is I want full forensics. I want, like me as being a private equity company, opening up the data room, the vault, so I can see everything, really not have a clue what I'm looking at, but have access to everything so I can make what I think is a really informed decision. So if you need that type of information, then go buy an existing business and you're still not sure what it's going to look like. The other thing that you can do is start your own company where you don't have any data at all. So I see this as a really good mix between starting your own company and, being that private equity company that has the forensics of everything, and they have a really good understanding of what all those numbers mean because they have a team behind them that's done it a million times. So really my mindset as a franchisee looking at franchises, buying a second or third or fourth or fifth brand, or my first brand, if that was me, is to know that I'm not going to get as much as I want. And I have to be okay with that because we never get everything that you want. If you always want if that's your goal to get everything that you want before you make a decision, you're probably not meant to be an entrepreneur. And so my goal is if I hear something from the franchisor that says the startup costs are going to be X, Y, and Z, I want to talk to the franchisees and say, were your expectations going into it? Were your expectations met? And whatever that looks like. So as long as expectations are getting met, that's really what I want to validate. I want to validate is what the salesperson saying, is it true with the franchisees? That's what I want to validate. I want to validate, just everything that I hear throughout the sales process, not just numbers. We get so numbers focused because we think that's everything. It's a lot, but it's not everything. So validation to me is happy, successful franchisees and having a clear understanding of what that looks like. In different brands, if your thing is to make a lot of money really fast from a cash flow standpoint, you need to validate that. If it is to build long-term, large, life-changing wealth, then you need to validate that. And that's probably two different types of models. So those are some of my thoughts, just, off the top of my head of a mindset going into it. I want the world, Kim. I want access to everything, but I have to know that at the end of the day, this is me. I'm betting on myself. I'm betting on the franchise that they know what they're doing, but I'm betting on myself as the jockey. And a lot of times I've seen, people not go through the process because they really don't want to bet on themselves and they blame it on the numbers.
That is so true. Well, that's really the point that you just made that I tried to tell people is that you are the single biggest variable in the success of your business. So when you're trying to validate a specific net return, you're taking yourself out of the equation because we don't know how you're going to show up and how you're going to perform. So when you're talking to all these other franchise owners, the best we can do is understand in their context with their goals what they've been able to do with the business. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to equate to what you're going to do. We talk about jumping off the edge of the diving board, taking a leap into the safety net of the franchise. Well, that means that implies that there's a free fall. Like there's some amount, there is a safety net, but there's some amount of uncertainty that's going to be there. And people intellectually like know that, but emotionally, I find it very, very hard. And I think that during this pandemic time that we've been living through, where so many people maybe feel so many things are out of control, I see this issue coming up more now than like ever before in 19 years, where I have very successful corporate executives who are like missing out on the opportunity. And where this conversation really comes from is I had a franchisor turn a partnership down because they were doing just this. They had validated with more than 10 franchisees and they still couldn't get the numbers to be satisfactory for them. And this particular franchisor is one of the largest in the world at what they do. And they were like, look, man, like we just don't think that this is necessarily the right place for you because you're trying to do something that's not realistic in our process. But then you know what happened, Erik? They turned it around and said, well, if that's how the franchisor feels, we're glad we've seen their colors now. Like, if they're not in it for our success and they're just in it to meet some timeline. And I'm like, whoa, like you've had more than enough time, and ultimately candidates can do whatever they want to do in whatever time frame they want. I just want to make it clear as the consultant that it's a mutual evaluation process. You can't know everything. And eventually the franchisor can lose hope that you're a good decision maker, right?
100%. I know the brand that you're talking about. Last week when I was at the Mighty Dog Roofing Discovery Day, so I was at a Mighty Dog Roofing Discovery Day, which is one of our brands, and there I got a phone call, and it was me, Josh, and Zach in the truck riding together. I'm like, hey, I'm going to grab this phone call because he wants to talk about selling his franchise. It's the same franchisor that you were talking about earlier. We're not naming names. And he said, Erik, I got an offer to buy me out at 7x. 7x net profit, 7x EBITDA. And I'm like, that's great. It's the same brand. If they would have talked to this guy, believed in themselves, could make a decision. I mean, think about that. That's amazing. So I thought you would find that interesting because you and I hadn't talked about it. You didn't know that. And since we're not talking about brands, I can say that. And I think his net profit per store was about 300K per store and 600K 7x, we're talking millions of dollars. Wow. So anyway, that's the stuff that I get to see. But then going back to Mighty Dog, to answer your question, we had a franchise discovery day with 6 or 7 candidates that showed up. And we tell them before, you're finished with discovery day, you're meeting with us, and it's are you in or are you out? You're not signing or giving us funds, but are you in or you're out? Because this is it. And so at the last discovery day, we had 3 of them that said they're in. One of them said maybe. I saw him at the airport and he was talking to another one of the candidates and we were leaving. He was on my same flight and he said, see you later. I'll see you in June. And I said, I thought you said you weren't sure. And he's like, I'm sure. And so he said, I'll see you in June. But it's just funny. We set the expectation, and I know that you do too, because it's the right thing to do, that it's decision time. And most people just can't make a decision. And this is what I was going to say. Back to Discovery Day a few months ago, we had a candidate, the consultant he was working with, sent him to 6 different discovery days. And it's a consultant I actually respect. I have a lot of respect for this person, but this candidate, and we've all done it, right? We're not all perfect with our things, but some of these, it's the one-off for this particular consultant because I have a tremendous amount of respect for him.
Yeah, and on my faces, I'll just say, look, we're not judging other consultants because at the end of the day, the candidates, our advice is free. I tell my candidates, look, I'm going to tell you what I think works best, what I know works best, but ultimately it's your process. And so while we don't recommend more than one discovery day, because that's not really how discovery day should be used. at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, candidates sometimes go rogue and do what they want to do. But sometimes to me, that's a sign that maybe they're not even suited to be a good franchise owner because they're not even willing to follow my leadership in 19 years of experience. And I mean, owning a franchise and success in a franchise is all about following a leader, you know?
So
But
that's
anyway,
exactly what we
to
thought.
your
So
story.
you're you're 100% correct. Like you can't tell them what to do. So that's why I said this. These things happens from time to time, but it's not good to do that as a candidate, as you're looking. But anyway, so he was getting ready to attend another Discovery Day 2 weeks later. So he's very clear to us, guys. I'm going to another Discovery Day in 2 weeks, and I'll make my final decision. We said to him, either you're in with us or and out with the other one. So cancel the Discovery Day, sign and pay within a week. Otherwise, we're not interested because he couldn't. If he didn't do that, he wouldn't follow a system. Blah 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 blah. So that was what we did. Like, we absolutely did that. Not all brands do that, but the best ones do. And you work with a lot of the best brands out there, so you've seen it so many times. But that just, I love putting content out there like this, and this is what I do on my podcast, because people hear it here, and they're not just hearing it at the end of the decision process when we're like, hey, you need to make a decision now. Like, no, this is part of the whole process all along. And if you can't make a decision, I tell people too, this is the easiest thing. You say yes. It's all been fun and games up to this point, researching, Discovery Days, this, that, and the other. But then all of a sudden, write the check, sign the agreement, start a business. That's when it gets real. But that's when the decision makers, the real entrepreneurs, do it, and then they move forward, and then they're betting on themselves.
So, okay, let's just take that little moment in time. So, as the candidate, I'll play the candidate, you pay the franchisor. So, I'm the candidate who's completed the process and can't make the decision. So, really, what I'm really probably saying is I'm either not suited to own a business and I don't want to man up to that. So I'm going to say that it's the numbers or it's the timing or a lot of times probably more it's just fear,
Mm-hmm.
saying yes is hard, and that's why. So okay, so let me ask you, as the franchisor, instead of answering it, why is the process designed to complete it and then yes or no?
Because it's a decision point. It's like, you're there. This is the process. We're not gonna, as a franchisor, continue to try to, like, sell you on something. Like, we really do want franchisees that can make decisions, because that's the first decision of many that you're going to have to make. You have to make hiring decisions, firing decisions, money decisions. And if you can't make a decision like that, then you're going to make poor decisions or late decisions, or you just won't make any decisions at all as a business owner. So it's just going to get more difficult from there until it gets really easy and really comfortable. And then that's when it's life changing. You're like, this is amazing. This is the freedom. This is the thing I was looking for. But it all comes back to the crux of that decision to say yes. And at least own up to it. At least say, I can't do this. It's me. It's this. It's that. Like, learn from that versus blaming the numbers, blaming this, blaming that. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. Learn from it. Learn about yourself and why you said no, so you can go fix that, or not find yourself in the same position 6 months later thinking you're going to go through the process again with a different brand, and then you end up in the same spot.
Oh, so true. So well said. Yeah, exactly. We, as the teachers, as the guides in the process, we can set the expectation, and the franchisor can set the expectation, and the franchisees can set the expectation of what a day in the life looks like and how the numbers are going to come together. But ultimately, it's always on the candidate to set their own expectation, to say yes to their own dreams, to man up to the moment at the time that you're ready. And there's a reason I have a business, and the business is to properly prepare people to get to that discovery day, so that you're not feeling pressured into a yes, that you feel inspired to the yes.
Yep.
If you follow my process, the discovery day is used as your closing tool. It's your event, not the franchisor's event. Don't make it the franchisor's event. Put yourself in that empowered position where you've done the right things through the Daly Coach process, which is the franchise process that Erik knows, so that you can then be empowered and inspired to follow through in that moment, rather than to have them take
100%.
it away from you.
Yeah, because they will. The best franchisors will take it away from you. We absolutely would have taken it away from that guy because if he couldn't make that decision, that was the line in the sand for us, and it would have been over. And the best franchisors do that. Along the lines of validation, one of the things that I think as one of the things that I tell people, don't believe us. Don't believe the item 19. Half of the item 19s I don't believe anyway, Kim. So like I throw all of that stuff out there. I throw the item 7, which is the estimated startup cost. I throw the item 19 out because franchisors can slice and dice that any way they want. I love it because it gives you a benchmark, but if they slice and dice it to make it look better than it actually is, and you follow the Daly Coach like validation way, then you're going to uncover that. And that's why you present brands that actually line up to what is presented is actually what is it in reality. But if you're out there listening to this and you don't have a clue about any of that, don't believe the item 7, don't believe the item 19. Use that as a benchmark, validate against it. And if you're hearing a lot of like, yeah, that's accurate, then that's probably a good thing. But that's where that's what I do. I pretend like I don't know anything and nothing I see is true. And then I go and learn. The other thing that I do is learn about the industry. And in roofing, I mean, roofing is not sexy. It's not fun. People have all these misconceptions like, I'm going to have to climb on a roof. Well, we at Mighty Dog, we have a drone. So you press go, it measures the roof and it comes back down. So, you're not getting on a roof. We have, we just do so many things for franchisees. So we have a recruiting process. Other people say, I don't want to recruit roofers. Well, we have a recruiting person in our office. That's all she does is recruits for our franchisees. And you know this, we're not the only franchisor doing really cool stuff like that because you have a bunch of them that you work with that do really cool stuff that most people don't see. But here's the deal. When you're thinking about validating a franchise, validate the industry as well. And I'm hearing this from candidates. Oh my gosh, I know some people in the roofing industry. One drives a Maserati, one has 3 vacation homes, and they start looking at the results of the industry, not just like, oh, I have to climb on a roof. Oh, I have to do this thing that's not very fun. And all of a sudden, once they really start to validate an industry outside of the franchise, that's another like key piece of validation that I think is important.
Amazing advice, right? Because we're not selling widgets, right? I mean, the other way to look at that is everywhere you look, there's a roof. So,
Yep.
and then at some point those roofs need to be repaired or replaced, right? Excellent.
Kim,
So,
that's why people need coaches. That's why people
right.
need people to understand things. Even as we are looking at acquiring more brands for horsepower underneath that umbrella, one of the things that we like are we go to our SEO guy and we're like, what are the best leads? He's like, well, roofing leads are the most expensive. So are restoration leads, and so are garage door leads. Those are the worst leads. I didn't say, okay, we don't want that. I said, why? He said, because they're the most expensive. And I said, why? Because it's an emergency thing. Once somebody calls or does something, they need a response because they need a company right there. He's like, and they're the most profitable. And so I'm like, that's perfect. We want more of those brands. So we all think we know, or we hear something from somebody that says, oh, these leads are bad, or this is bad, or this isn't very good. You need to understand why they say that so you can really make good, educated decisions. And you can't do that on your own if you don't know anything about franchising.
Yeah, that's amazing. Erik, you're so amazing. So, to wrap this up, I want to go back to what you were talking about before with validation. I thought of one more thing. So, when you're validating, and I agree, like I have a video, I agree with everything you said on item 7 and item 19, initial investment and earnings claim just being numbers on a page. I have an entire video. You can go find it if you're interested in that, my viewers, on why, taking numbers out of an FDD is really the wrong thing to do. And even turning to the FDD too early in the process is a complete waste of time. And
100%.
you've
Yes, yes,
got to
yes.
breathe life into those numbers through the people. You're not investing in an FDD, you are investing in a relationship, and a relationship is represented by people, the franchisor, and then the family that they've built. So all of that is like spot on. So when you're validating, to wrap this up, it made me think that not all franchisees are created equal. And so while the franchisor really is not allowed to steer validation, right? I always encourage my people to steer their own validation, to ask the franchisor before you just start blindly calling franchisees, why not get to the top performing people in the system, the people who at this point in the business's history have mastered the model. And I stress that point because a business is not a stagnant thing. Next year, somebody may break loose from the pack and have a new top, a new top number. So you're validating where the business is today and buying into it for where you think you can take it. Do you agree with that advice? And what any other advice as a franchisee and or from the franchisor side you would give regarding, selecting the right kind of people to validate with?
I think if we're told to do something as human nature, we try to do the opposite. And we think like, oh, they just
It's
want
like
me to
my
talk to
kids,
top
Erik.
performers. Yeah. So we think if they're
I
just
want
wanting
them
us
to
to
do
talk
something, I tell them to do exactly the opposite of what I want.
yeah. So Kim, you need to start telling people just talk to the underperformers and then they'll still go talk to the top performers, which is a thing they should be doing first anyway. So I'll say it this way, the reason that I always like to talk to top performers first as somebody looking at franchises, because they gave me what it's supposed to look like. They gave me what works and what doesn't. And I asked them questions like, why is this working for you? Why would this not work for somebody? So first and foremost, you need to know who you're talking to, because that way, if you don't know who you're talking to, you're giving the same weight to every person's words, and you should not do that. If you're talking to a top performer, you need to know they're a top performer, why they're a top performer, what the things that they've learned, the mistakes that they've made, and you can learn the most from the top performers. If you want to talk to somebody average, then if you want to be average, talk to somebody average, but you need to understand that they're average. You need to ask them questions that kind of probe the averageness in them, so you can understand if they've got a full-time job, maybe that's why they're average and they're in a system that should not be allowing people with a full-time job, or they're underperformers and they have a full-time job and nobody else has a full-time job in there. Then it's probably you need to be the business owner that's active in the business type franchise versus an absentee, semi-absentee type business. So you need to find out why. Why are the top performers the top? Why are the average? And why are the bottom the bottom? Don't try to talk to the bottom performer to build a pro forma. I mean, that's like, you just don't do that. So, I heard this advice many years ago, do you see yourself being an underperformer, average, or a top performer? Everybody says a top performer because that's why they're doing it. Then you need to validate with the top performers, see why they're top performers, see if you resonate with them, learn from them, because those guys are going to be your friends. Those guys are going to be your peers, not everybody else. So I'd like to start with the top performers, do a little bit of dabbling in the bottom to middle performers just to understand why, to make sure that there's nothing that I am missing, confirm there's nothing that I'm missing, see myself as a top performer. I'm good to go.
Amazing, wise advice. So, to my listeners, if you followed my story, you know that I share my story of how I was an average performing consultant for the first 8 years at FranChoice. And then I did a few things that really, launched me into the stratosphere and made me one of the top performers in the country in my industry. So I was the same person. I know what I was doing then, really what I wasn't doing, and then what I started doing, and I saw the difference. And so let's thank our guest today, Erik Van Horn, my great friend. I love you and I appreciate you so much.
Kim, this has been a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, I love the content you put out. I love who you are. I know you care about your people. That's first and foremost. There's a lot of people that don't have as much care and handholding and thought throughout the process as you do. I can think of 2 consultants in the entire world that are above and beyond all the rest, and you're one of them. I appreciate just everything that you've done to help me along my journey, and thanks for inviting me on.
If you found this inspiring, please contact me at inquire@kimdaly.tv. My consulting services are totally free to you. Again, that email is inquire@kimdaly.tv. I can't wait to hear from you.